Hey, how's it going? Today I'm going to be talking about GDP or gross domestic product and what that is. Gross domestic product (GDP) is fundamental economic indicator that measures the total monetary value of all goods and services produced within a country's borders over a specific period, usually annually or quarterly. It is a crucial metric for assessing the economic health and size of a nation's economy. GDP can be calculated using three different approaches. As you probably know, since it's very hard to measure a lot of things, right? So we're trying to assess a number of different things here. So we're gonna be looking at products or services, right? And to measure those, we're gonna use accounting, right? I'm talking about accounting, constant challenge, as well as I'm trying to bring everyone up to speed for people out there who haven't dealt with accounting perhaps that much. Perhaps it should be taught in school so people would have a better understanding for some reason of why that's important, even though perhaps not right now, perhaps within a matter of next 4 or 5 years, perhaps faster than that. More of the accounting perhaps be outsourced to software solutions, right? So perhaps that would be some implementations as well. Some of it, the changes coming into effect in the future, but either way, uh, you yourself should understand everything from there. Then you can outsource some of the tasks to use software. That's my own understanding, right? But today we're trying to within this video we're trying to measure products and services, and to do that, and not necessarily you can measure how many. If we're talking about vegetables, how many potatoes, how countries are doing, right, within the particular borders, right? We're gonna be measure by in terms of how much money all that product can be worth. It can be calculated using three different approaches. Production approach. This approach calculates GDP by summing up value of all goods and services produced in the country. It is also known as GDP at factor cost. Income approach. This approach calculates GDP by adding up all the income generated within the country. This includes wages, rents, profits, and taxes minus subsidies. Expenditure approach. This approach calculates GDP by summing up all the expenditures made within the country. It is often expressed using different formulas. If you actually are interested, you can do a little bit more information out there and to understand a little bit better. But either way, so I'm not good to have a way to measure everything. Just again, what kind of currency we're gonna use, since all those currencies are made out of thin air. There's no value to the currency. I don't know how do I need to bring everyone up to speed. If we're gonna, what country's currency we're gonna use? so, there's gonna be new factors coming into effect, right? So since currency, who has control over the currency, right? So we're gonna measure everything against what currency within that country's currency, within central currency, within dollar, within yuan, within ruble, within the pound. What kind of currency we're gonna measure everything against, right? So we need to have some understandings. We need to understand some of the rules. Ideally, I prefer to measure with against that country's currency and understand that country's currency and how that country is doing. Not that country's currency against other countries' currency, since some other countries can do a lot of shady things. Again, this is what can happen. So, why is that important? That country, who we're gonna measure? So, if we're gonna measure against euro, who is responsible for euro fluctuation rate of euro, right? So, it can potentially be measured So that country, if we measure against euro, right? So we're taking any country, we're gonna once we take that country, that country's internal currency, and we measure against euro, and euro potentially, there is a printing press that keeps increasing financial policy and how much euros are available of that. So that throws everyone off balance. Perhaps if we were come back to a gold standard, perhaps then it would be a lot harder to do. But currently, it's just a mess. It's a mess out there. Nominal GDP. This is GDP without adjusting for inflation. It presents the current market price of goods and services and may not provide accurate reflection of the economic growth when inflation is present. Real GDP. This is GDP adjusted for inflation, providing more accurate representation of economic growth. It allows for comparison of economic performance over time. I guess to some extent that would give you a sense. Not necessarily you would be able to measure all the factors, but you would be able to tell how that particular country is performing. So to some extent, how much of that country's budget is coming from oil, for example, right? How much of that country's budget is coming from agriculture, just to give you a sense, right? If it's 80% or if it's 15%, so it just gives you a sense. GDP is used for various purposes, including economic comparison, comparing the economic performance of different countries or regions, economic growth assessment, tracking the growth or contraction of economy over time, policy making, informing economic policies and decisions made by governments and central banks. Standard of living, providing a rough measure of country's standard of living. Business investment, influencing business GDP can potentially influence business investment decisions and strategies. Market analysts, guiding investment decisions in financial markets. When making decisions, when doing market research, as well as running a company, making projections of the way how things are moving, and based on those projections you can adjust your own strategy and policies and the way how you would like to run your company and adjust your own trajectory of the course of action, right? Let me share an example with you which I personally believe is very important. Sometimes some of the countries up there, when deciding countries, when making policies and deciding what those countries would like to do, depending on GDP, right? So perhaps that country might have access to talented people, might have access to high-tech, cutting-edge facilities, high-tech, right? High-end, high-tech, right? So most of the countries should orientate themselves based on the GDP and some of the countries who are actually doing very well currently on the market. Most of the countries focusing on more on that side of things, right? As well as perhaps some of the countries of that in giving into comparison, right? Let's take Japan and the way how they'll instead of focusing on agriculture, they would rather purchase everything. So all food that they can get their hands on, they would rather purchase that. And if they can spend their time doing something, they would rather focus on the high-tech things, right? So we can sell those things if we can. Cars, equipment, they would rather focus their time doing the constructing, building, right? They adjusting all the country adjusting their strategy accordingly, as well as maintaining what would be required to for agriculture, but to most extent, they would rather focus on high-tech industry, build the cars and sell those cars, and for within the time spent, where they could focus on agriculture, right? So they would rather buy all those products and import into their countries, right? So by doing that, they would potentially, as a country, they would earn more if that matters. So if we're talking just further about monetary, things and the way how people can think. Perhaps some of the countries that's the way how they're thinking. I don't know if that's working for them or not, but that's you can do your own research to understand a little bit better what I'm talking about. But that's just the overall strategy and how some of the countries are focusing their strategies and ways of thinking. For people out there who are interested in learning more, I have published a book. The name of the book is Game Strategy. In this book, I'm sharing a lot of information with the people out there who would like to learn more, understand ways of improving themselves, as well as progressing into running a company where everyone would begin, doing research, right? So if that's a stage where you find yourself in, from there, if you were to take action, actually go for it and start your own company, as well as from there, if you were to progress and begin investing in different companies or different projects out there, supporting startups, right? So depending on where you find yourself in, for any of these stages, I have published this book to help you understand the different markets as well as where the things are moving, how the markets are shifting. You can find everything in the description below as well as top retailers has it. GDP is just one of many economic indicators used to assess the health and performance of the economy. Other indicators such as unemployment rate, inflation rate, and balance of trade are also important for comprehensive understanding of economy. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.